All right, everyone, the impeachment farce now continues in the U.S. Senate, where the Republicans have a hold of it. Here's a prediction. Whereas you got a lot of updates during the House proceedings, when Pelosi and Schiff were running roughshod over the system, taking advantage of the fact that the Democrats happen to run the U.S. House of Representatives, you're going to see relatively less. There'll still be a lot of coverage, but I think you're going to see less and less sensationalistic coverage of the impeachment proceedings, at least until the very end in the Senate. Here's why. Mitch McConnell's a procedural genius. You can say whatever you want about his politics, but he understands the way in which the Senate works and how to manipulate the rules and features of the Senate's decorum. The Senate simply is more solemn and has more decorum than the House. This is partially by the design of the founders. The Senate initially wasn't even directly elected. Specifically, the House was elected. The state legislatures convened, and then they, I believe, were the ones that elected the senators to the Senate. It wasn't even a direct vote. The idea was that it was similar to the House of Lords. It was more meritocratic. It was slower, more solemn, more antiquated. And the idea was to prevent actually direct democracy. The idea was to prevent the kind of wanton, potentially harmful levels of populism you could get if you only had what we have as a House of Representatives, or similar to a lower house of Parliament in the world, where things are directly elected, because then a bunch of people can come along as part of a movement that says to 60% of the population, we'll give you the shit from the other 40%. They can then make rules, and because of the structure, they could run roughshod even over the executive branch, and they would have a veto-proof capability. But you have the Senate to stop that. Because it is more boring, let's face it, than the House. In the House, they can act like they're in a college atmosphere. In the Senate, it's a little bit different, and Chief Justice Roberts will be playing an outsized role there as well. There's no particular reason to believe that you're going to see the sort of fireworks that you saw in the House proceedings. Now, keep this in mind, all right? There were almost no fireworks there either. There wasn't any bombshell testimony. If you are already primed to believe Orange Man bad, Trumpfler, Blumph, whatever, if you don't like Donald Trump, what you saw in the House proceedings is clear-cut bombshell evidence that the president lied and misused his power and did crazy things. For all others involved, it was just a fucking boring procedural nightmare. It dragged on and on and on. Then Pelosi, inexplicably, she decides to hold on to the impeachment articles for almost a month for absolutely no reason, knowing full well Mitch McConnell knows his rights and is not going to bend over backwards to give her any further assurances. Then with great supposed decorum, in a very supposedly solemn way, sends the articles over to the Senate the other day, and now Mitch, of course, the senators have been sworn in. They're going to take a look at it. It's even odds what happens from here on out. Chances are, my hunch is, that McConnell will speed the process, that he'll generally make it a fairly quick process, and that it'll result in a fairly quick acquittal. And part of the reason why is because there's no reason to remove Trump from office. He hasn't done anything wrong. The charges themselves are bunk. That much is perfectly abundantly clear. They were rambling the other day about the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, saying Trump broke the law, and then it was pointed out that they'd said the same thing about Obama a dozen times. Nobody cares about them. They're just a bureaucratic organization like any other. They have their own particular, supposedly independent opinion, which is really totally not. And like all bureaucratic sort of groups, it's going to seek to justify its own business. One of the best ways to do that is to get attention. What better way than to insert yourself in the 15 minutes of fame style instant news cycle that we've all become unfortunately accustomed to? I pointed out before, by the way, that news cycle, which works to such great detriment on having a government that is run properly, that's not Trump's fault. Trump came in being Donald Trump, and other people adapted their behavior accordingly. They took the bait, or you could say they simply started acting like Trump. Trump was never a politician. He was the wrestling federation dude, and the pageantry dude, and the apprentice dude. He was the dude who went on Stern and said, grab him by the pussy to Billy Bush and stuff like that. Well, I mean, the American people, by and large, haven't degenerated into evil, piggish people because of this. And it's just Trump being Trump. Fucking get over it. As far as anything impeachable being done, no, not really. In fact, asking a foreign state to look into corruption potentially is one of the jobs of the President of the United States, so I'm not sure why that's even on the table. Notice that Nancy Pelosi kept invoking Russia, even though I believe neither of the charges directly stem from anything having to do with them. In their presser 2 days ago, she was mentioning Russia. Oh, you impeach him because of Russia and stuff. Well, you must be going off script, Miss Pelosi. What the hell are you talking about? That has nothing to do with abuse of power, the Burisma investigation. That's Ukraine, number one. Number two, the other charge has to do with obstructing Congress. Well, that has nothing to do with the Russians. It's funny to see them dredge up the Russia bullshit in case Biden loses, which they clearly are. The only person in the whole Dem field right now that they're fixated on with that is Joe Biden. Whoa, the people tried to hack into Burisma emails and stuff. They're obviously targeting Joe Biden on behest of Donald Trump. It's funny because the other person that they've always ever targeted with this is Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. But I mean, Tulsi Gabbard refused to vote for impeachment, so she wears the scarlet letter of T for traitor against the party loyal, I guess, among Democrats for the rest of her life. She's going to say, I told you so, by the way, in a couple of years, when Trump is acquitted, probably gets reelected, when all of this stuff blows by because there's no longer a further Trump election to look forward to trying to stymie with claims of Russia, she's going to say, see, I told you so, ha ha ha, and she's going to run again for some high office. Not necessarily the presidency, maybe she'll run for governor. She should be the governor. She's a Hawaiian, right? Yeah, she should seize the gubernatorial run there in Hawaii and knock everyone out of the way. She'd win very easily at that point for having some degree of foresight. And then she could chuckle and she could say, hey, you need people that are able to see the future in government, or at least able to kind of guess what's going on, as opposed to all these old fuddy-duddies, people that are twice her age. Jesus. So impeachment's in the Senate. It's going to be even more dry and boring than before. Mitch McConnell, I mean, he's not exactly a charismatic sort of guy. Have you ever seen Mitch McConnell give a speech? He looks like that cartoon turtle. I can't even remember what the hell his name is. Yertle the Turtle or something. The one with the big glasses. And he's just kind of a weirdo. I mean, I'm not a fan of Mitch McConnell. Some people expect you to be a fan of him or any other Republican because it's like, Orange Man Good syndrome almost at some point. The only one there that I really respect is Rand, and I don't agree with him on everything either. Rand's idea, I guess, is to try to use procedural elements to block the Democrats as much as possible while bringing forth additional witnesses that are in favor of the Republican side of the argument. There's really no reason to bother doing so. You can make it short and sweet. What I would do is use procedural elements, if I were McConnell, to simply drag the testimony. I would basically force a rehash of the House trial, only with more Republican cross-examination, more of a level playing field. And then I would bog things down as long as possible, and I would keep Sanders and Warren and Klobuchar off the field to raise the temperature on the Dems. Because at some point it would make the Democrats look as though they were conspiring to do the same thing to keep Bernie and Elizabeth Warren off the trail ahead of the first states voting. If he can keep them locked up for 2 weeks, maybe 3, he can ruin their campaigns, Biden wins these states, and legendarily weak Biden becomes nominee. Of course, I think he thinks that that's a good idea. I think that he's more... I think the general wisdom among Republicans is that Bernie is a threat. I happen to disagree completely. I don't think that he would win at all. I think his snake oil would be completely exposed and he would be toast. I think he would lose by a larger margin than Biden. I think Biden's more of a threat than Bernie Sanders. That being said, it's obvious that that's the way in which they're approaching it. They're more concerned about Sanders. They're more concerned about the geriatric dude who just had a heart attack, who's sparring with his own party, just barely joined the Democrats last year. He's more worried. You're more worried about him than the dude who's literally that's got 50 years of political experience. Sure, he's demented. Sure, he's got issues. Sure, he tells weird stories from his childhood as though they happened yesterday. But arguably, that's more sane than socialism. So keep that in mind. That's about all. Peace out.